Disturbing news from across the border. It's reassuring, of course, that they're the ones worried, isn't it? After all, it's the Russian war criminals who are concerned about their own oil refineries. Russian media report that the security situation around oil processing facilities has significantly deteriorated over the past 2 months. And there are no signs that the situation will improve. All the details are in our report. There's another commotion in Russia. This time, everyone is fussing over the situation around the oil refineries. As the saying goes, Ukrainian long-range sanctions are in full effect.
It is the reliance on oil that is the needle of crochet, which in fact ultimately determines Russia's future.
Russians are especially worried about the security around the oil refineries. This is reported by the Telegram channel Kremlin Snuffbox. Sources in the government state that the security situation around oil refining facilities has significantly deteriorated over the past 2 months. And the trend since the beginning of the year is extremely troubling. The oil refineries continue to suffer. The supply of spare units has been exhausted or is nearly depleted. The units are complex and critical, and the attacks unfortunately continue, according to our inside source. At the same time, sources close to the Kremlin have officially stated that a fuel shortage in Russia will be successfully avoided, at least for the next few months. However, this is a task not only for the authorities in general, but also for local officials, who must already begin reducing consumption by non-critical enterprises. Civilians are advised not to stock up on fuel in advance in order to avoid a sharp increase in prices. However, under conditions of reduced production, price increases are almost inevitable. Nevertheless, strikes on Russian oil and gas infrastructure and sanctions pressure have already created serious problems for Russia's economy.
Most of the revenue that Russia receives comes primarily from oil. Oil, petroleum products, and to a lesser extent gas are what allow the Putin regime to exist, to buy weapons, to hire mercenaries, and to continue the war against Ukraine. And if, for example, Ukraine systematically targets Russian oil refining and oil transportation, which is what we are seeing now, then ultimately this will create a lot of problems for Russia. After all, this is rather complex equipment, which is not so easy and simple to repair, and most importantly, it will require money. In other words, what is supposed to generate revenue will instead bring losses.
Just in the past few months, Russia has lost about 10% of its oil refining capacity. In these few months, this means a loss of 10% of Russian oil refining capacity. It is also important to note that Russian oil companies are being forced to shut down wells. This is quite significant and noteworthy. To restore full production at these wells, Russia needs to undertake significantly more extensive efforts than many other oil-producing countries, which shut down wells merely in response to market fluctuations. Russians can't do that. For them, losing production is truly very painful. Moreover, due to the comprehensive pressure on Russia, the deficit of the Russian budget for the first 5 months of the year has already exceeded the figures that Moscow had planned for the entire year. The Kremlin does have reserves to continue the war, but they are not unlimited.
Putin, of course, set aside money for the war, but certainly not enough to fight indefinitely. Every retaliatory strike we make, every step we take together with our partners, every step of pressure, all of this pushes Russia toward ending the war. Right now, they already have a significant number of regions in a state of bankruptcy, and Putin is leading Russia toward bankruptcy.
And Ukraine is not stopping there and continues to put pressure on the Russian economy and oil refining sector, and will keep doing so. And that's the right thing to do.
In Russia, the entire economy is essentially a few pipelines and a few dozen oil refineries. And all of them are large, all of them are huge, scattered across the entire territory of Russia. That means it's impossible to fully cover them with air defense systems. And if Ukraine systematically takes them out, sooner or later, both the spare parts will run out and the money for repairs, and ultimately the Russian economy will too. Well, not that it will come to a complete halt, but a significant portion of the revenue will disappear. And this is under the conditions of the overall crisis in this very economy into which Putin has driven Russia.
President Volodymyr Zelensky, for his part, has already stated the effectiveness of Ukraine's long-range strikes on Russian territory. And he made it clear that Ukraine plans to intensify such strikes, and has already approved the corresponding plans for June.
Today, I officially approved our long-range plans for June, and we must continue to creatively develop the Ukrainian long-range sanctions that clearly demonstrated their significant strength during May. I am grateful to our warriors for their accuracy.
And now we move to the Kupiansk and Lyman directions of the front. Yes, these are sacred targets for Putin and for all his cohorts. Accordingly, the situation here is extremely tense. In the Kupiansk direction, the enemy carried out 3 assault actions towards Kurilivka, Kivsharivka, and Novoplatonivka. One of these attacks is still ongoing. In the Lyman direction, the enemy has attacked twice towards Zarekny and Lyman. Both of these attacks are still ongoing. Meanwhile, Ukraine is moving to a brand new level in the war of technologies. This includes its own guided aerial bombs, new long-range missiles, and several joint projects with Europe. The Ukrainian defense sector is rapidly increasing its capabilities. How is the war forcing Ukraine to become one of the strongest producers of modern weaponry? We'll tell you right now. Ukraine has created its own guided aerial bomb, and this is no longer just an experiment or a project on paper. According to Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov, the bomb has passed all necessary tests and is ready for combat use. It took 17 months of work by Ukrainian engineers to develop it. The project was implemented with the support of the Brave Own platform, a state initiative focused on developing military technologies. The main thing is that this is a completely Ukrainian development. It's not a copy of a Western or Russian weapon, but a system created for real-world conditions of modern warfare.
A regular bomb, well, how far can it go? Even from maximum altitude, it can only reach about 10 to 12 kilometers when dropped from a high-speed aircraft. Here, the operational range is already significantly greater, many times higher than before. That's why such bombs, Russia is frequently and consistently deploying them all along the front line war. In fact, without the devastating strikes from these bombs, the Russian local assaults would simply not be possible. When infantry is thrown directly at Ukrainian fortifications, however many are killed, that's how many are killed. Each time, sometimes during the most intense assaults, up to 150 of these bombs are dropped in a single day.
The new Ukrainian guided aerial bomb is capable of striking fortifications, command posts, and other targets tens of kilometers away, deep into enemy territory. In other words, this is yet another tool for delivering precision strikes against the enemy without requiring aircraft to directly enter dangerous zones. The Ministry of Defense has already purchased the first batch of these new aerial bombs. And that means the development is moving into the practical phase and could appear at the front in the near future.
Well, basically, it allows us to destroy any field fortifications. Then to destroy, well, command posts, to destroy depots. Then this will provide a significant and vital advantage to our ground forces in repelling ongoing Russian ground assaults and offensive maneuvers. During our planned counterattacks, we will be able to utilize very similar tactical approaches. This involves a heavy strike on Russian fortified positions. After that initial impact, our specialized unmanned aerial vehicle units will systematically neutralize any remaining enemy forces using precision drones. And the assault group captures these positions.
But Ukraine doesn't stop there. At the same time, work is underway on new long-range missiles. A European company, Destinos, together with the German concern Rheinmetall, is creating the Ruta Block 3 system, a missile with a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. The new missile will have a warhead weighing 250 kilograms and a modern navigation system that will allow it to operate even under GPS signal jamming conditions. This is important in modern warfare, where electronic warfare systems have become one of the key factors. Its tests are to be conducted specifically in Ukraine. According to the plan, the first flight tests will begin in 2027. The project is being developed simultaneously in several countries. The main engineering center of Destinos is already operating in the Netherlands. Germany will be responsible for mass production and certification, and Ukraine is responsible for testing, combat adaptation, and the production of certain key components.
70% of Russian enterprises of the Russian military-industrial complex will be within strike range. This essentially means that we will be able to effectively destroy not only military facilities in the border regions and in Crimea, but also gain the capability to reach strategic targets located quite a bit beyond the Ural Mountains.
Just a few years ago, Ukraine's defense sector mainly relied on old Soviet designs. Today, however, the country is creating its own high-tech solutions, from FPV drones and naval unmanned vehicles to aerial bombs and missiles.
There are a lot of components from Western companies. At this point in time, we practically have no significant restrictions on our access to advanced Western technologies. We can freely use both radio electronic components and individual modules in our weapon systems.
Ukrainian weapons are starting to attract the attention not only of the military, but also of international partners, because a significant portion of these systems has already been tested in real combat conditions. Thus, Ukraine is gradually becoming one of the key producers of modern weaponry in Europe.